I am so glad you're here. My name is Miss Natasha, and I am doing some cleaning because I just finished my newest picture book, Bella and Lily. Do you want to see the cover? Okay, drum roll, please. Ta-da! But in the process of making this book, I created a lot of trash. So I came up with an idea to turn this into a messy sketchbook. So everything that was in my trash bin, the cardstock, the leftover wrapping paper, the scrap paper, all turned into a sketchbook. So if you want to learn how to make this too, let's get started. Okay, so let's gather the materials. First, I have binder rings from the craft store, some leftover scrap paper, you know those last sheets you have at the end of the roll, a ruler, a pencil, my trusty hole puncher, rubber cement, it's so great for paper, and lots of scrap paper. So I collected 50 sheets of old printer paper and also cardstock. So this is from my watercolor pad. Oh, and don't forget scissors. If you like folding paper, you are going to love this first step. So I just take the printer paper and I fold it long ways so that it looks kind of like a notebook. If you want to get the fold really, really tight, you can use a ruler or just make sure that you go over it twice with your hands. And you're just going to go through all of your saved paper and give it a nice little fold. So you can see I actually did this in advance, and I have lots of different types of scrap paper. Some of the scrap paper is pretty white, and some of the scrap paper you can see the ink on the other side of the paper. And you know what? I like both types because this is my messy journal / sketchbook, so I don't mind if I see the ink on the other side of the paper. And there we have it, step 1 complete. Okay, now we get to make the fun cover. So I'm using the cover of an old watercolor pad, and I'm going to use one of my folded pieces of paper as a template. And I'm going to make 2 sheets on this paper. So I am tracing my scrap paper twice. So let's grab our scissors and cut out the 2 sheets. Okay, awesome. They look great. Now I'm using rubber cement for this project because I like that rubber cement doesn't make paper wrinkle. I also love this tiny little brush, but you can use a glue stick, you can use white glue, you can use any glue you have. We just want to kind of hide what the cardstock used to be. So I'm going to cover the colored part of the cardstock and kind of stick it together. So now it is just one blank cardstock on both sides. The wrapping paper I'm using for this project is from one of my favorite author illustrators, Anoosha Syed, but you can use any wrapping paper or paper you have at home. I like to have a nice clean fold on the inside of my journal, so I'm actually measuring 1/2 inch all the way around so that when I fold this paper in, it's going to make a 1/2 inch border all the way. So just follow me and you'll see what I mean. So the top part was easy, but the bottom part I'm going to have to do a little bit more measuring to make sure that it's a 1/2 inch from the edge. I made a little line so that I know which part of the paper to cut away. So I'm going to make my last 1/2 inch border at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and connect all those little marks I made so I know where to cut away at the bottom too. So you can see I've pencil lined where the border should be for this book. Now you see the result of all that work, a nice clean border, and I'm going to just cut away a little bit of the corner. So I've just cut out a 1/2 inch box from each corner. I kind of already had the pencil marks there, but this is going to make the fold a little bit nicer when you fold it against the cardstock. Okay, this time you can glue either side because both sides are blank. And this is why I love this little brush, because it really helps me get into all of the corners and make sure that the whole cardstock is covered in glue. The thing about rubber cement though is it does dry fairly quickly. So you want to make sure you're working fast to get the glue on there and get it onto the paper as quickly as possible. Now I'm showing you how to make this once, but you're actually going to make this twice because you want a front cover and a back cover. Because I'm using rubber cement, it will minimize the amount of bubbles that show up. You just have to kind of give it a nice pat all the way down. And you can check your work too to make sure it looks pretty smooth. That looks good. Okay, now I'm going to put down my corners. And you just get a nice thick layer all the way around. And then you can start folding. I see a little piece sticking out over there, but I can just snip that away at the end. So just keep folding, making sure you go all the way around before the glue dries. All of that work to make sure that the border was 1/2 inch on the back really paid off because I love how it looks on both sides. This wrapping paper from Anoosha Syed is so beautiful. If you don't love gluing or wrapping, I have 2 options for you to try. The first option is using an old folder. So I actually used this folder while I was making Bella and Lily. I kept printouts inside of it and samples of work that I wanted to look at. And now that I'm done with the project, I put all of the things I wanted to keep away in storage, but I still wanted to keep this folder as a memory. So all you have to do is either take a piece of scrap paper, or if you've already made that template from Cardstock, you can just trace out the covers on the folder and give it a little cut. I used these as a cover without wrapping them, and they worked just fine. The second alternative option is just using fancy cardstock. Sometimes I'll just have like 1 or 2 sheets of fancy cardstock left over from a pack that I used for a bigger project, and I never know what to do with them. Well, they make great covers. The next step is measuring and punching holes. So you start with the side of the paper that opens and you find the middle and you measure 1/2 inch inside because you want to make sure that the open side of the paper is what's on the side of the binder ring. The reason I do 1/2 inch is because it seems like a comfortable spot for the binder ring. You can eyeball and decide what's 1/2 inch, but I like to make sure that it's accurate. So I'll go down, find any spot, and measure 1/2 inch, and then I'll go up and I'll measure 1/2 inch because I want to make sure that the paper is not all wonky when it gets inside the notebook. It should be kind of around the same spot. It has wiggle room, but not that much wiggle room. You can use your first paper as a template, but I find that I end up making my holes too big and it doesn't work out for me. So I use the long way, which is actually using it as a pencil template and drawing the holes first. That way I'm not kind of overshooting and making the top template too big. This one takes a little bit longer to do, but I get the most accurate holes, which is super important for a binder. At some point in this process, I figured out that my hole puncher can actually punch at least 3 sheets of paper at the same time. So then I didn't put pencil marks on every single one. I kind of stopped so that I can gather 3 sheets together and then punch them, because that still kept the accuracy pretty well. Honestly, this took a long time. Thankfully, I have video magic on my side right now. Okay, that looks pretty good. I can see through the holes. That's all you need to do to make sure that this works in the binder. Okay, now we are going to measure and fit the book cover to our scrap sheets of paper that we prepared for the sketchbook. So use one of your scrap sheets of paper as a template because you want the book cover to fit with all of the sheets that you just created, and use a pencil to mark the holes. It takes a little bit more muscle to punch the holes in the cardstock, but it works. Okay, the moment of truth. We get to assemble all the pieces with the binder rings. So sometimes I'll do a little bit of a check to make sure that the holes are on the right direction, because I did put them in different spots. So I want to make sure that all the pages are lining up to exactly where I put the punch holes. When I get a few of them working, I stick in the binder ring, so you just leave it open and you use it as a hook to catch all the paper so that the rest of your sheets go on exactly like your first few did. So I can speed this part up. Yay, the first hook is complete. Now for the back cover. But I just realized that I made a mistake. I put the holes on the wrong side. It happens. Okay, I made a new cover, and this time I'm going to put the holes on the right side. So let's use that wrong cover as a template, and now I know the holes are correct. I will go ahead and punch them in. And woohoo, it works. Okay, now we can keep going. I found the best way to get the remaining binder rings in is just doing a little wiggle, wiggle, wiggle all the way through. So let's do it one more time. Through the top, wiggle, 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 and another wiggle, and there we go, clipped in. Sometimes when you overcome a few mistakes, it makes the end result so much more satisfying. Thank you for joining me and making this messy sketchbook with me. I had so much fun. I hope you join me next time, where I'll show you how I actually use my sketchbooks. Until then, goodbye.